That was a real lesson in today's workforce learning, that's for sure.
So, looks like we're recording right now, so you wanna click got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you want me to put the chat up there for you or no?
No,
All right.
I'll be monitoring the chat back there. Good morning. Welcome to our AI at AU Forum. Today we have Dr. Leslie Cordie, who's going to be with us today. She'll be talking about digital literacy and citizenship, AI practices for the 21st century workforce. So join me in welcoming Dr. Cordie.
I really want to say thank you and thank you for your patience. I think that was a really good sort of teachable moment, right, in terms of what's happening in terms of changes in technology and how we can work together and understand that we come from different contexts, different practices, different disciplines, and how we might be able to move forward. So I think that will resonate with my sort of discussion with you today. I see a few familiar faces, a couple new faces out there, and obviously some people in Zoom land that I'm very familiar with and I've been lucky enough to work with. But I want to thank you for coming this morning. I'm going to share some thoughts on theory, research, and practice. I think what I'd like to do is also encourage your interest in terms of thinking about what is next and what are those AI competencies that we need in workplace learning. Voila. A little bit about me. I know a few of you know me and probably know me fairly well. I've had a long history of working in multiple careers, multiple disciplines, and have been at Auburn pretty much only about 10 years in a faculty role. I started my career in nursing, in public health nursing, which was really education with the public. It was during the HIV or AIDS crisis, and I learned a lot about myself and about teaching people about their health. Because of the crisis and what was going on at that time, which should seem very familiar to some of us with the pandemic, I decided to go on to graduate school to hopefully go back and give back and help manage the process and the policies in terms of public health. Took a detour. I got into the University of Texas at Austin into their MBA program. Barnes, I don't know if anybody is a Texan fan, had a wonderful program, had the opportunity, was awarded an internship with American Airlines in their computer division. And during my internship, I had a project on quality management with the computers, and was subsequently, that project was adopted for over 10,000 folks in the computer division and worked for the airlines full-time. Life happened, got married, ended up in Okinawa, Japan, and wanted to continue working with folks in terms of teaching and learning, and started working with the University of Maryland Asian Division. That's now familiar to you as University of Maryland Global Campus. And I taught undergraduate business education courses. In fact, you can see that I'm dated. I started teaching online in 1995. So that sparked my interest in continuing to teach and learn with workers in many different places, and came back to the United States and was in Colorado and was exposed to their community college leadership and adult learning program. So I wanted to get my PhD. I wanted to study adult learning and along with online learning. And at that time, again, in the early 2000s, we really didn't call things distance education, right? We just called it online learning. And my PhD dealt with interaction in the online environment and how adults adapted to that learning environment. So I felt pretty strongly about that. You could see that that's kind of continued with my career. got hired from overseas, went overseas again for a brief stint, got hired by Auburn University as a distance learning specialist. Did a few years of that working with the College of A. Was even here in the College of Engineering for a little bit with Nels Madsen. And then decided I was gonna try something else, right? And went to the Air Force for a little bit, became their chief curriculum coordinator, worked with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, did that for a few years, and then was the faculty role here at Auburn came available, and now I'm in that tenure track faculty position. One of the last things that I'll remind you or tell you about is that I've been a Fulbright Scholar. In 2021, I was awarded Fulbright Core Scholarship, and I worked and lived in the Caribbean with a small country and helped them develop their first online undergraduate program, and I'm still in touch with them today. And then lastly, I'm part of a big research network on professionalization of adult educators working in the Asian European region. Now let's talk about the future. How do you feel about the future? Some of you will be surprised. Some of you might be nervous. Many of us are uncertain of what's going to happen, especially in the workplace. And no one can really predict the future, right? We don't have that magic crystal ball to figure out what's going to happen. And we know from the continuous information coming to us from a variety of sources is that we don't know what technologies, we don't know what types of jobs, we don't even know what types of skills. But I encourage you to have a sense of wonder, a sense of being optimistic about the future and having a sense of control that you can help shape your destiny. And as adults, that's really important to us because it provides us with that sense of control, the idea that we have input into our future, and it helps our well-being and our future lives. So what are some of the transformations that we need to know historically about the workplace and workplace learning? Okay. From the literature and business and history, we look to the industrial revolutions, right, as to dramatic changes, both scientifically and technologically, right, that have impacted society and have impacted workers. So you can see up there the first industrial revolution dealt with mechanization, right? The idea of using machines, right? Larger machines like the cotton gin, like the railway, to bring workers from an agricultural place, rural areas into the city, working with these machines and trying to create more products and services. Okay. It really changed the sort of dynamics in terms of society, right? We developed a working class because there was more educational opportunities and more pay opportunities to these people in these so-called factories. The second industrial revolution happened around the late 1800s with the onset of electricity, right? The development of the assembly line and, oops, sorry, got the wrong button. The development of the assembly line and mass production, right? Mass production, and most of us remember that in terms of the Model T, right? The car production. Industrial Revolution number 3 is, according to the researchers, is around 1969 or the 1960s. And we know what happened then was the first robots, really, the use of high automation, space exploration, biotechnologies were just coming into fruition. And of course, the birth of the computer, right? The birth of the computer. And the last one on this slide is the Industrial Revolution that we're most familiar with, probably here in this room, is the Fourth Industrial Revolution, okay? And that is where we are kind of cooperating with machinery, right? We had the internet, we use the Internet of Things, and we're connected to very many different people in different spaces and across the world. But I would say to you that we're in the fifth industrial revolution. We have now, not only in 2020 did the pandemic happen, but the high use and the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence has launched us into this new sort of cognitive age. And we're not sure where it's going to go, right? We don't know how we're going to interface with these computers. We're uncertain, right? Remember, we're afraid. And I want to try to talk to you about what that worker needs to know, what you need to know to help us move into that future. Now, I said, how many of you are familiar with AI? Everybody in this room, probably everybody on Zoom, because that's why we're here, right? We're probably some of those early adopters, right? But I think that no matter where you live, right, no matter what you're doing, perhaps what country you're from, we know that AI has become a big thing in terms of the news, right? It's out there. There's been rapid changes in the past few weeks alone that we know of in terms of policies and identifying concerns about AI. So you've seen the big AI summit over in the UK about safety, right? With the Prime Minister of Britain. We've seen a new song generated by the Beatles, right? With George Harris and John Lennon, who have not been with us for decades, but this brand new song was created by generative AI. We've also seen that are things that are more familiar to us in terms of using AI, computer generation models to help us predict storms and events. Okay. And then lastly, most of us are familiar with the idea that we can Google things, but we can also Google information that is organized for us into categories and subjects and help us learn, right? For instance, like Khan Academy. So we can't escape AI in our life. In terms of the workplace, right? That was more personally, right? And policy-wise, personally, the worker is uncertain too, because they don't know who or how they are going to be affected, right? We have to think about job exposure, job replacement, job creation, the uses of AI in that job, and AI, what are the AI technologies and how fast are they changing? So some researchers say that those high exposure jobs, meaning that AI probably could either be utilized almost exclusively or at a high rate in that job. And 1 of 5 workers in the US is exposed right now at this moment, and it may increase. And those jobs usually are held, one of the things to consider, more women, more college educated, and higher paid jobs. Okay? In some of the research, it'll tell you that there's over 85 million jobs that might be eliminated because of AI. But then if you look at the other research, it tells you because of AI technologies and advancements, over 97 million jobs will be created. So that's a net surplus right there. And we have to think about where work is completed and the rate of adoption of technology by those businesses, industries, and how they're going to be able to catch up. So some of those things are really important as we think about how we move the worker forward. So how many of you use AI in everyday life? I can't see if you're raising your hand out there in Zoom land, but I'm betting that all of you have, right? So if you have a smartphone, you have used AI, right? Last night, as I was finishing up printing off this presentation, Siri told me, would you like to know how to use your voice for these different types of tasks? She was listening to me, right? Telling me, I can help you schedule on the calendar. I can help you write a text. I can help you be on time for that meeting. So most of us have used AI in a variety of ways. And I think it's exciting, right? I know I learn from the university writing folks and the Visio folks the other day about Zoom AI, right? Like we could actually have it going right now. It would give us a summary of this meeting, and it would have designated tasks for us as we went forward if I gave you homework or I had you work in groups or something like that. So I think that's kind of exciting. What are the industries, though, that we can focus on that we know that we want to help these workers adjust to these AI technologies? I picked out only 3 industries to look at. And these are where we have a lot of workers, a lot of employees, one of the main industry types of employers, okay? We have healthcare, finance, and retail. And we're going to talk about how AI has already been incorporated in there. So you can see from this beautiful diagram, this is not even all of the answers, but AI has been used in the medical field and the healthcare field for a long time now, and it is rapidly continuing to change. We know that the time to develop a vaccine went from years down to less than a year in some cases, helped with AI. Right? We have special cocktails of drugs that can treat specific types of cancer, specific types of diseases. And then like the other day I heard that there's a gene editing that can help us with our cholesterol, or gene editing that can help with sickle cell anemia, right? And eliminate it and improve the quality of life. So some of that's very exciting news in terms of the quality of life personally, right? And the jobs that may be opening up professionally for workers. Now, some of you are very familiar with this device, a wearable device, right? So not only does your iPhone help you understand how to sort of facilitate your life, you can have the Fitbit or the iPhone watch, right? That's a wearable device. It can tell you how well you're sleeping. It can help you communicate with others, right? It can tell you, mine tells me to stand up because I sit behind the desk, right? So that's very fun. I enjoy my iPhone watch. We also have diabetic sensors. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I just made my father get one of these. He was poking his finger and then he decided he didn't want to poke his finger. And of course he went into a diabetic coma because he wasn't checking his right? And so now he has a diabetic sensor. He loves his little iPhone. He carries it everywhere he has. And now he's able to tell and others can also pick up the phone, right, in his household and check and make sure that he's doing okay. Again, another good use of AI in healthcare. And then lastly, I just saw this in a commercial the other day. There's a new little credit card size device that you can hook up to your iPhone with an app, and you can put your thumbs on it and it will do an EKG for you and send it to your doctor in case you're having heart problems. Love it. All right. Finance and banking. How many of you actually go to the bank to get money from the teller? A couple of you still do. Okay, all right. Well, good. I'm glad, right? I'm still sort of in the process. I use the ATM probably a lot more than, and that's been around, technology that's been around for a long time. But there's also, right, the ability to transfer money online. You can take a picture of a check, right? You don't even have to go into the bank. So many of you are familiar with this. My parents, I can't get them to adapt to that. They have to take the check in and sign the back of the check, but you can do that. When I checked into the doctor the other day, I could even provide my payment online, right? I didn't even have to meet with the person at the beginning. But you can see some of the other examples up here. Lending, right? We have credit scores and being tracking of our spending and purchases, makes decisions in terms of mortgage and lending. Customer service is not just for finance and banking, but we know that we can get different options depending upon what number we press, and talking to that customer service rep, right, about what we need to do. And then the trade markets. We know that the trade markets also monitor what's happening, whether it's a bull or bear market, and that's all generated by forecasting. And then lastly, retail. Retail organizations. Many of you are probably familiar with this, right? If we're online shoppers and purchasing of any goods and services, we can virtually buy anything online now, right? Anything, especially since the pandemic. And we see AI through virtual shopping assistants, or what we call intelligent recommendations, right? My favorite is when I'm trying to purchase something from Amazon, it gives me recommendations to similar products, right? That's AI generated. And it also makes recommendations as to what I might need to go with that purchase. So that's AI generated. I bought some lamps the other day. It was a lot easier for me to do it. I had a plethora of choices, right? But it knew when I picked one of the lamps that I like, it made those similar recommendations. It also knew what height I wanted. And so it saved me time. I was able to buy lamps to my husband's dismay in less than 15 minutes, that he wondered why we needed lamps. So we see AI shopping with the self-checkouts in Walmart and other institutions. There's an AI camera right there. It's not only for theft, it's also to make sure that you're not having trouble with that purchase, and it sends you a survey at the end in terms of your how you feel about that shopping experience. And you can try before you buy. Has anybody done this? Nobody. Yeah, done. One person, right? You can try on your glasses before you make a purchase, right? You can see the different types of glasses, and you can see that it's going back and forth. And there is a piece of furniture. You can see how that furniture looks from your virtual app on your phone. So there's all sorts of wonderful things that can happen in the workplace in terms of workers. But what about that worker? What is going on with them? They feel it is exponentially changing for them, right? When I talk to some colleagues, especially some friends that I don't necessarily work with directly, they are concerned about AI and about that face-to-face contact and about connecting with the human being. And then they have also had some shifts in expectations, right? They have had this pandemic happen, and they're not sure about work-life balance. They're not sure about working remotely or hybrid, right? Coming into the office at certain days. And they're concerned about AI taking their jobs, right? We've had recent news, right, about the labor unions with the United Auto Workers. We've also had the strike from the Screenwriters Guild and Actors Guilds, right? Because they were worried about their images being able to be used without their permission as time went on. So we need to identify what are those shifts in expectations. What are the technologies in those industries that are probably going to be used? And then identifying those workforce positions and trying to prepare the best for what's going to happen if we're going to use AI in that position. What will that job description look like? And then the skills then that they need to have in order to do that job. And not last but least is the idea is that the marketplace, the workplace is not just here in Auburn, it's across the world, right? So we have to think about working in different time zones with different languages and different cultural values. So how do we prepare that human being? How do we prepare that person as we move forward as an adult educator? Building workforce capacity can be looked at in two different frameworks. We can look at building their digital literacy skills, and we can build their digital citizenship. Okay, so this is personally, professionally, and for the well-being of society. What is digital literacy? It's just like the literacy that we've heard for many years about reading, writing, and math, but this is the ability to use technologies to find, evaluate, and communicate that information. And you can see this nice little diagram about digital literacy. You can see the 5 core areas, right, of the search and evaluation, the creation of meaning from that information, communicating that information to others, collaborating with others to develop that information, to share that information, and then being safe in the internet environment. Okay? And these are skills that are common across all industries and disciplines. It is not discipline specific. Digital literacy in the workplace. I know that some of you are more familiar with this, especially in the engineering fields, but all of us have to be able to recognize and utilize data from a variety of sources. We have to collaborate and utilize those tools in the cloud. We also have to be safe and secure. We need to be aware of those emerging technologies, how our skills that we have now can transfer forward, and how to value collaboration with AI technologies. What does that look like for me? What does it mean to work in conjunction? How do I talk to this technology to help me move forward, learn better, connect with others? So these are the digital competencies that the European Union has identified way back in 2015 that they felt that their people, their workers needed. So it was a big push for European policy. They also implemented policy in terms of privacy data that we're still catching up here in the US, unfortunately. But hopefully, since we've had the White House executive order, that'll change. Now, digital citizenship, though, kind of goes beyond the literacy, right? It's really at the center of the process. And being a good digital citizen means that we have these skills, right? We have these 21st century skills. That drives the process, because being a good digital citizen means that I understand that there are ethical issues and access issues, and I need to understand how that connectivity connects to all of those. So the P is the person in digital citizenship for me, okay? We can't forget the importance of people, the importance of human skills, and we need to know that it is respect and empathy for the person, the worker, the learner, that we are able to evaluate those sources, find valid sources, but also evaluate them for bias, okay? And most importantly, that we're open to other viewpoints. Not just to ours, not just to share that information, but to have real dialogue about what we should do next. So how do we prepare that human? Again, what age do we start at, right? I had a funny little video, but my husband told me to take it out. I'll have to share it with you. But it was this baby being born, and he came out and he knew how to cut his cord. He knew how to put his posting on Instagram, and then he was able to share his information as he walked out the door. It's adorable, adorable. But here's where I come into the picture. Lifelong learning. Really believe in lifelong learning, and it's the idea that learning just doesn't happen at 1, at 3, at 13, at 30, or at 50. It occurs across the lifespan, and we have to know the appropriate context, the appropriate time, and the learner needs to be at the center of this. Human being needs to be, and because of that, we'll understand the complexities and their motivations and meet the learner where they're at terms of that need. If you look at this learning timeline, the shift in expectations on both business, industry, technology, and the worker, I think are highlighted in this timeline. In the 20th century, we front-loaded learning, right? We have K through 12 education. We push you into school or some sort of post-secondary education and trade. Now, the idea of lifelong learning is that timeline is extended. Not only are we living longer and probably having longer better quality of lives, and people want to be involved in different educational pursuits, but workforce pursuits. Some people never want to retire. I have several colleagues that I know that are going to work until they're not useful anymore, I guess. And before we thought we had 1, 2, maybe 3 careers, right? And especially before the 2000s. You worked for the same organization or the same industry. No longer is that true, right? You're going to have multiple careers, probably several careers, over the span of your lifetime. In fact, they say, the research says that by 2030, 1 in 16 people will already have changed their position. I feel that the lifelong learning disposition is what'll help the worker. It'll help us as instructors. It'll help us as educators, as trainers, and it'll help the learner understand what we need to go forward. We need to be able to adjust to these dramatic changes, right? And remember I said to you at the very beginning, how do you feel about the future? This is the idea that you have open-minded skepticism. You're not necessarily positive about everything, right? And you not only have those digital literacy and digital citizenship skills, but you understand that that's a lifelong process and that you have to be adaptable and flexible as much as possible. This comes to us from Cordie. He's from Harvard School of Education. He's on a lot of the talking circuits. There's a couple of other educators who have been but he really ties it to lifelong learning and the idea of going beyond emotional intelligence and having the growth mindset, being able to be resilient, mindful of your practices, having some agility and being curious about what's happening, right? Understanding, oh, why are they saying that? What technology are they using? How does it? I will tell you that the American Associations of Colleges and Universities, AAC&U, also has a lifelong learning rubric that is not dependent upon discipline or content, and that you could incorporate that rubric into some training strategies and learning strategies. So I'm hopeful about the academe. How do we do that with the individual worker? Well, the idea of personalized learning, right? We need to push the idea out to the learner, the worker, to be self-directed learners, right? They have to be able to understand that they are responsible for their learning with or without the help of others, that they can diagnose sort of what they need in terms of learning. Think about both those human, technological, and material resources that they need. Think about the learning strategies that work for them. Is it face-to-face, or is it online, or is it a combination of both? And then manage those learning activities for their own personal and professional lives. So I have 3 examples of personalized learning up here for you. We have LinkedIn learning, the idea of open educational resources, and then AI tutoring. Now we have LinkedIn learning at Auburn University for us as employees. It's a wonderful a resource for us. It's available under the employee tab in AU Access. It uses the theory of self-directed learning by using practice and reflection. Right? Reflection is a big component. And you can see that it has these capabilities that can really help move us forward in terms of the workforce. We can look at career recommendations, give us course recommendations. We can track our own personal growth. We can even earn a certificate or a credential in a specific content area. We're allowed to practice in a variety of different ways. And then, of course, it's available 24/7. Now, I know HR here at Auburn University also supplements this types of training, right? With live classes, Zoom classes, and other opportunities. Many different organizations are utilizing platforms like this internally to help them meet the needs of their workforce learning just in time. Open educational resources, these are things that are available to all of you, right? Khan Academy, we mentioned that earlier. There's a variety of topics and levels. I think now you can even do practice SATs on there. You do physics, biology, and others, and it follows the educational standards that are needed so you know exactly when you're accomplishing your learning outcomes. MIT Open Courseware, free credentials, free courses. You might have to pay for the credential if you want to purchase it, but if you just want to study on your own, it's free. It focuses more on post-secondary topics and the needs for career learning. Open textbooks, many of us have used this probably in some of our materials in our courses. These materials can be shared in a variety of formats. They don't have to necessarily be an ebook. They could be an audiobook, a PDF download. Again, they're available from diverse educators from across the world. And lastly is the OER Commons. This is a online public digital library that allows you to search by subject, search by grade level, search by standard, and it creates a community of practice where educators can collaborate with one another to create materials. Wonderful. And then one of most of the exciting areas of personal learning is when we use that platform inside a company that has online training or different types of materials and resources for their learner, and it meets them where they're at in the workplace. It really allows for self-directed learning, and it has the tutor available to help them choose what's important to do in that task, how long it took them to do the task, what they might need to do the task better. Okay? And you can see some of the activities here. These are the generic activities that happen with AI tutoring, no matter what platform. It happens while the person is engaged in the activity and try to matches the skill level based upon some surveying of what they need to know and what they know. It is self-directed though, you get to have some choice. It's a form of experiential learning because it's happening in the now when you're on the workplace. It can help in a variety of tasks, and it utilizes those key components of reflection and feedback to the learner about what next. And you can see the benefits from this because it's personalized content, but yet it can provide a consistent experience across workers. It can reduce training time because it meets them where they're at, right? We're not just giving the same lecture to every single student, right? It's personalized content. They know this part of the task is unclear. This is what they need to improve it and move them. And it also collects analytics and can give a return on investment to the management as to, is that tool working? Is that task working? And how can we help the worker do a better job? So it's really not only about productivity, it's also about the well-being of the worker. So I know there's a new AI tutor out there for Khan Academy. It's called Conmingo, right? So I haven't tested it yet, so that sounds kind of exciting. All right, so what can I leave you with? I encourage you to embrace uncertainty. Just go ahead and jump in. We've covered a lot of different ideas today, but consider your lifelong learning disposition, right? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to you in terms of educating and training? And I want you to encourage you to feel like you can change the future. Of course, I'm going to tell you as a lifelong learner to become more of a self-directed learning expert and be skeptical about the learning and engaging with new people and new ideas. One more thing that I'd love to show you, but I don't think I can. I did a, I went to NextGen and I used my photograph and I made it a talking photograph in less than 10 minutes this morning. Now, it was a free software program. Didn't take me very long to learn it, right? I could upload the photo I gave it the text, and I could share that with you if you like later. It wasn't my voice, right? So I'd have to pay for the version, right, to make it my voice. And I think probably Mariah out there or others might know, Chandra and things like that. They might know how to, they might have software that you can change your voice, but it was a wonderful experience for lifelong learning. And with that, I'll open the floor up to questions now that Dr. Dozier left.
Let's give her a hand. So do we have any questions either online or in the room? We'll check the chat and see, do we have any questions? Oh, and she was saying, Chandra was, I'm saying Murph, M-U-R-F,
Yeah.
Murph.ai. Okay.
Chat.
Well, I guess, what are some interesting collaborations? What do you think that some of our next steps would be?
So I think the idea is that getting the different types of stakeholders in the room together, right? We talk about it in my discipline as community of practice, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be people from one organization, from one discipline. It's just people who are interested, right? And who want to learn, and those people can help us. I think there also needs to be more connection to sort of the learning cycle, right? From K through 12 all the way to industry and industry back into K-12. And I know of some groups that are doing that well. Here in Auburn, there's a community college that is thinking about developing a program about vocational education and training back into the elementary and giving them some specific examples and tools about how to use different types of tools, technologies, so that they're prepared as they move forward. So the community of practice and involving different types of stakeholders, I think, are probably important. We tend to work in silos, right? Because we're comfortable with those same types of people. We speak the same language, right? And I don't know if that's going to be sustainable in the future, right? I think the fact that Dr. Dozier involved me in this, I felt very grateful. Chris, from University Writing and the Biggio Center, I think those folks have reached out to many different folks to collaborate, and I think we need to look outside the institution also.
Dr. Cordie, thank you so much for your great presentation. I totally agree with you in that in the age of AI, flexibility, personalized learning, growth mindset, all these are very important. But from a learning or so teaching point of view, people are willing to study new skills and knowledge. But we don't know which one will be necessary or not in the near future. So how I can decide which one I need to learn?
I think that the AI can help us decide, right? They or it will be able to tell us, based upon the prompts that we put in, what we need to learn. And I think there's the idea of transference, right? So even though I may not have been able to use the technology, not counting what happened this morning, but the idea that because I know how to use Microsoft PowerPoint, and I have done some editing of photos, I was able to easily transfer those skills to that new AI generator. So it's the idea is that just because I know this one software program, I should be able to transfer some of those skills and how I sort of navigate that situation. So I think the idea of transference will come into play. It's also part of the idea of being able to reflect on, sort of what does that mean? And we don't do a lot of reflection, I think. I think we try to learn a task, we try to attain a skill, and then we kind of move forward, right? And so I think if we reflect more on what did it mean? What does that degree mean, right? And what am I really going to do with that credential? I think that'll help us as we move forward. but I don't have the answers either, I'm hopeful, that that sense of optimism, the idea that we're gonna have to sort of have a shift, right, in terms of who's responsible for learning, right? That it's more of a collaborative effort, whether it's AI or other people. I think that will probably be one of the main shifts.
I think Dr. Cordie mentioned the discussion is not really within institution. So I wonder, so how do you see the connection between institution with industry? And how can like the institution be part of the development of the workforce to benefit the industry, like individual employees?
So her question has to do with how we sort of collaborate with industry. And so we learn those skills, like Dr. Herr said, right? How do we do that? Well, I think we have to sit down at the table with one another, right? And we actually have to talk about it. I know that there's an initiative here in Alabama, I'm sure they're across the United States, where they try to encourage industry to come in into a state, right? There's monies available, and we have something called AIDT here in Auburn, in Alabama, where there's pre-employment training. So we try to bring the potential workers up to a level of skills that we know, we've heard from the industry members what those people need. And so we give them that pre-employment training, then they go interview for the job, and then they're probably more successful on the job because they have those pre-employment skills. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is kind of a weird question.
Okay.
I'm thinking about your slide with lifelong learning.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you had there, I guess, was after agility, is curiosity. And so over lifelong, right? How do we, I don't know the word, cultivate or stimulate or awaken? How do we inspire this curiosity over a lifetime? That, I think, is really important. I think sometimes we tend to, I don't know, maybe I do, but as I get older, I kind of turn off certain things. How do we go about stimulating?
Yeah, I think we all probably suffer from that, Dr. Dozier. The research says is that what we want to do is expose people to more experiential types of learning practices where that they can actually apply those skills, be interested in why those skills are important. And so that has to happen systemically and repeatedly throughout the system, right? And so it can't just be a one and done and you check the box. So I think that helps with experiential learning. Experiential learning can take many different types of forms, but obviously, I'm lecturing to you today. In general, we didn't have to hold it like this, right? We could have sat down together. We could have had a discussion, even with the people on Zoom. We could have had some pre-reads and we could have talked about what it meant. I could have still facilitated, we do that a lot in our graduate classes where we facilitate the learning, you do the reading, you come to class, and then you actually have the discussion. Used to call it flipped classroom. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but that's that same idea, right? Bringing in guest speakers, right? For real world application, right? Rather than me just lecturing all the time to my students, I bring in guest speakers from all across the world because we have the Zoom capability. And so I think just having those repeated exposures and the idea that, it translates to internal motivation, right? Intrinsic motivation, and it stimulates that we have a sense of control, right? And our well-being. He's the only one who didn't ask a question. That's okay. I won't put him on the spot, even though I just did.
I'm gonna come speak to you afterwards.
Oh, okay. So I wanna apologize for the technical difficulties, but it was a teachable moment, right? I think I appreciate my two colleagues. I appreciate the folks who came and shared some time with us, the people on Zoom, who are some of my colleagues and sort of my mentors, and I appreciate you spending time with me today.
Thank you.
Now, just, you don't save the